From Wisconsin comes a candidate who not only calls himself a fighter, but also a winner. In 2012, he won a recall election schooling the teachers union, which sought to unseat him after he reformed exorbitant benefit packages for government workers. He's 2016 GOP presidential candidate Scott Walker, and he joins me for an exclusive one-on-one interview in this Newsmax Prime special, starting right now. Welcome to this Newsmax Prime special, a conversation with Scott Walker. I'm J.D. Hayworth. Scott Kevin Walker became the 45th governor of Wisconsin in 2011. The son of a pastor, he came from humble beginnings, growing up in a small town, and the spirit of service was instilled in him at an early age. Since becoming governor, he's proposed bold reforms that have helped eliminate his state's $3.6 billion budget deficit without raising taxes and giving school districts and local governments the tools they need to balance their budgets without the forced mass layoffs seen in so many other states. Governor Walker and I sat down together on the campaign trail in St. Louis, where he was in town preparing for a fundraising event. Scott Walker has said it's his ability to fight and win that sets him apart from the other candidates. So when we sat down together, I began by asking what else might distinguish him in this very crowded Republican field.
Great question. In fact, on that, I see a lot of great Republicans, many of whom are friends, people I've worked with, but they really fall in the two camps. There are fighters, many of whom are in Washington fighting the good fight against the president, but they have yet to win those fights. There's many others, governors, others who've been, again, people I've worked with who are good at winning elections and re-election, but they haven't consistently taken on the fights of late that really matter. What I think makes us unique in a field of really qualified candidates is we've done both. We have fought and we have won. We didn't just win 3 elections in 4 years in a blue state. We actually won the battles, the common sense conservative reforms that people care about all across this country. So I think that is a distinguishing factor. The other thing is, you asked what more? Well, to me, a new, fresh-faced, with big, bold ideas from outside of Washington and the capacity to get it done. I think it's a great contrast to Hillary Clinton, who's obviously not a new face. Clintons have been around for decades, somebody who embodies Washington, and somebody who ultimately, really, if you look at her record, not only has she not gotten things done in the Senate or as Secretary of State, arguably, if you look today in the world, every place that Hillary Clinton has touched is more messed up today than it was before she and the president took office. So a great contrast. Yeah.
Has Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment gone out the window in this campaign on the Republican side?
Well, certainly not from my point of view. People ask me all the time about other candidates. One week it's this one, next week it's that one. I just keep saying that person can speak for themselves. I'm going to tell you what I'm for and how I match up against Hillary Clinton. You know, we have a contrast out there, but I don't go after people by name. As you can imagine, there are a lot of media outlets out there. You've known that over the years as well, having dealt with them on the elected side as I do, that a lot of folks in the media say they dislike the fighting in Washington, but they want it to happen. They encourage, particularly Republican on Republican. What you're going to hear from us is talking about what we're for and what makes us unique and how I'm the best candidate to take on Hillary Clinton.
Donald Trump's campaign manager is saying that you should apologize for, I believe, Gregory Slayton of your finance team referred to Mr. Trump as a dum-dum. And Mr. Trump's campaign manager says, you know, Governor Walker's a good guy, a stand-up guy. He should apologize for what this finance...
for what one person who's a volunteer said. This is not my paid staff. This is not me. I've been asked probably 100 times in the last 2 weeks, and I've said the same thing. Donald Trump can speak for Donald Trump. I'm going to tell you what I'm for. I'm going to tell you what I think makes me unique about a candidate. I'm not going to talk about others out there. And if we're asked to respond for every volunteer in every campaign, I think you'll have hundreds of different stories like this. The bottom line is I personally and the people who are on my paid staff have been focused on me and our campaign, our issues, and we'll be going forward.
Donald Trump yesterday in Iowa said this. I'm just going to quote it exactly as it comes down. Wisconsin's doing terribly. It's in turmoil. The roads are a disaster because they don't have any money to rebuild them. They're borrowing money like crazy. They projected a $1 billion surplus, and it turns out to be a deficit of $2.2 billion. The schools are a disaster. The hospitals and education was a disaster. And he, referring to you, and Governor Walker was totally in favor of Common Core. You want to respond to any of that criticism?
Well, I'll just point out the facts. The facts are I inherited a $3.6 billion budget deficit, and we turned it into a surplus. The budget I just signed is another budget where over the next 2 years we'll have a surplus going forward. Our rainy day fund's 165 times bigger than we took office. Our pension's the only one fully funded in the country. Our schools are better off today. In fact, 4 years after our reforms, our graduation rates are higher, our third grade reading scores are higher, our ACT scores are now second best in the country. Our hospitals now are ranked second best in the country. So the facts are the facts. And a lot of Democrats have gone after us over the last 4 years with misstatements out there. We've been able to counter them with the facts, which is why we won 3 times in 4 years in a blue state, a state that hadn't gone Republican for president since 1984. We're going to continue to talk about the facts going forward and how if we can do those things in a blue state while still cutting taxes by $2 billion, lowering property taxes today than where they were even 4 years ago, bypassing right to work, concealed carry, defunding Planned Parenthood. If we can do all those things in a blue state, there's just no doubt we can turn things around in Washington.
Taking a look at the latest polling, your reaction to the latest numbers?
Well, for us, it's great. About 2 weeks in, I think most candidates would love to have being in the front of the pack just 2 weeks into officially becoming a candidate. I think in the end, when people see not only in Iowa, but in New Hampshire, in South Carolina, in Nevada, in places all across this great country, when people see that if you want someone who can fight and win, I hear a lot of frustration, as you probably do as well, from Republican voters who say, just American voters who say, hey, we elected a Republican House, we elected a Republican Senate just this last year, but where's the bill to defund Planned Parenthood? Where is the legislation to repeal Obamacare? Where is the fight against Obama's actions on illegal immigration that go beyond his legal authority? Those are things we've fought and won over in my state, and we can take on those battles there. We can do it in Washington. If people want someone who can fight and win, I think the more we get our story out, the better we're going to be.
Governor Walker's message continues to resonate well with voters, and he hopes his success in Wisconsin will prompt a move in January of 2017 to Washington and the White House. We will return with more of this Newsmax Prime special, a conversation with Governor Scott Walker, right after these messages. Welcome back to this Newsmax Prime special, a conversation with Scott Walker. I'm J.D. Hayworth. Border security, national security, and ultimately our collective security. I asked the candidate how things would be different if President Walker was in charge.
This is far bigger than just immigration. We talk about the border. This is literally an issue of safety, of national security, of even sovereignty. When you look at international criminal organizations penetrating our southern borders with drugs, with firearms, with human trafficking, not just people wanting to work, but literally human trafficking, egregious situations there. But we need to secure the border once and for all. We need to start enforcing the laws at all levels in this country. And then we need to have a legal immigration system that goes forward in a way that really puts a priority on American working families and their wages in a way that I think can fuel the American economy. If you start enforcing the law, the sanctuary city issues we've heard about, situations like this and others, I think will take care of itself going forward.
On a recent trip to Iowa, I guess in a town where you used to live when your dad was pastoring a church there, a family of illegals came to you.
Yeah.
And you had an interesting exchange with them. Would you recount that for me in your mind's eye, what exactly happened?
Yeah, and I told the family, particularly the 2 kids who go to an elementary school near where my nieces go, that I empathize with them. I certainly have empathy for their situation, but they were upset at me because I'm one of the 25 governors who went to federal court to block the president from the action he took, that he said 22 times before last November he couldn't do. He said he was the president, not the Emperor of the United States, and then a couple weeks after last November's election, he just threw up his hands and said he was going to do it anyway. I pointed out to them that what makes America great is that no man or no woman is above the law. The president said he couldn't do it. Legally, he can't do it. I went to court along with the other governors of the blockhead. And that while we're a nation of immigrants, we're also a nation of laws, and we need to uphold the law in this country. And I had, great empathy. I felt bad for that family and that situation they're in. Interesting, after we got done, a liberal activist group in the Milwaukee area in Wisconsin we found out paid for them to come on over and got back in the car with them and brought all their video equipment. So it clearly was a setup, but in the end, I think the policy is important. It's important to let people know that while I have empathy for families who are in difficult situations like that, particularly for the kids, in the end, we have to enforce the law in this country. We're a nation of laws. We can't look the other way, particularly when it comes to the president.
Everybody can change positions, but there is something that I'd really like for you to clear up for me. The Wall Street Journal in March wrote the following. Scott Walker told a private dinner of New Hampshire Republicans that he backed the idea of allowing undocumented immigrants to stay in this country and work, and now paraphrasing the article, perhaps even finding a path to citizenship. Is that your point of view?
No, that's not accurate. And I pointed out on Fox News Sunday with Chris Wallace many months ago that this is a position that I've taken based on talking to people like Governor Abbott and other governors and leaders along the southern border, that I listened to other people across the country, and I've acknowledged it. I said I had, as a governor, I haven't had much of a position before. It's not an issue I've had to deal with. So this is one where I've made statements in the past that weren't a part of any policy. I've always said I opposed the Gang of Eight legislation that Senator Rubio and others were involved with. But I said, going forward, I spent the time this past year listening to people, talking to people across the country, listening to folks who've been working day in and day out on the issue of immigration and dealing with the challenges, particularly along border states. And it is one where I've acknowledged that to me, I've taken a different path in regard to that position because I listen. And I think people want a president who, when the American people are telling them firmly what they want, are willing to listen.
On MSNBC's Morning Joe, Donald Trump told my old colleague Joe Scarborough that he favors a, quote, merit system, end quote, for illegals. Is that amnesty?
Well, to me, I don't believe in amnesty. If you take people who are here and you allow them to become citizens in particular, I don't think that's the right approach. To me, I don't believe in amnesty. I think you've got to go in order. You've got to secure the border. Otherwise, you're just opening the floodgates to bigger problems in the future that go far beyond immigration. You've got to start the process of enforcing the law in this country. And then you've got to put an emphasis on a legal immigration system, as I've said, that really puts a priority on American working families and their wages. When you do that, I think it'll help grow the American economy.
Border security is national security. When you say to secure the border, do you favor the fence? Do you favor a wall on our
Well, I think it's
border?
a combination of things. This is an issue of not just public safety. This is a national security issue, and increasingly it's an issue of our sovereignty out there. And so we will do what is required through the combination of technology, personnel, and infrastructure to make sure we can secure that border. It is one where these are international criminal organizations. If we saw this at either of our water-based ports on the east or west coast, we'd be sending in the Coast Guard, if not the Navy on top of that. We need to secure our southern border. Remember, and I saw this firsthand with Governor Abbott, increasing numbers of people crossing that they're catching coming across the border aren't coming from Mexico or even Central America. They're coming from places all around the world. I was surprised to see the number, for example, from Indonesia or other Muslim-based countries around the world. Elements of that have got to be connected to radical Islamic terrorism, and that should be a major concern to us here in America. We need to secure ourselves.
We will return with more of this Newsmax Prime special, a conversation with Governor Scott Walker, right after these messages. Welcome back to this Newsmax Prime special, a conversation with Scott Walker. Another hot-button topic for the candidates in 2016, the cultural assault on our faith and values in this nation. In this next portion of our one-on-one interview, I asked the governor, would President Walker have a plan to reverse America's decline both socially and spiritually?
Clearly, when you look at Planned Parenthood, one of the first things I did as governor was defund Planned Parenthood in my state, a blue state at that. So we did this long before any of the videos or anything else out there that would draw attention to this. We were ahead of the curve. I'm a pro-life governor, but I believe even beyond those of us who are pro-life, that people look at the money that's spent on Planned Parenthood and see what they've done in the past, even more so now with these videos. So I've made it clear that if I'm president, we will do just as I did in the state of Wisconsin. We will defund Planned Parenthood. There are many better ways that are non-controversial to provide support for women's health, just like I did in my state. And I think in the larger context, though, there needs to be a sense of standing up and protecting religious liberties in this country. I'm proud to say in my state's constitution, it's very explicit, the protection of religious liberties. I believe in the U.S. Constitution it is. I believe that's, when you think of people like William Penn, who came to found what's now the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, or Roger Williams, or many of our other founders out there, they came because of religious persecution elsewhere around the world. That's a key part of why the Bill of Rights are there. We need to have an administration that's going to defend the ability for people to practice their faith, whether they're Christian or Jewish or Hindu or anything else.
Jeb Bush seems to be the establishment favorite. He touts a conservative record in Florida. You tout a record of success in Wisconsin. Where do you two differ, you believe, in terms of your approach to the issues?
Well, I think on the most part, the biggest difference between the two of us, and Jeb's a friend of mine, I like Jeb and have looked at his record in Florida in the past with great admiration, and that is, I think if we're going to beat a name from the past in Hillary Clinton, we need a name from the future. That's the biggest difference. I don't see that you beat a name from the past with another name from the past. I think you need a new, fresh face from outside of Washington with a proven track record, and I think that's what makes me unique, not just to Governor Bush, but anybody else in this field.
Who is your favorite president and why?
Oh, well, Reagan's hands down. I mean, I love Washington, I love Lincoln, I love Coolidge, but Reagan, he knew who he was, where he was going, and how to get there. He was an eternal optimist. It wasn't just because he was a Republican or a conservative. He had an eternal optimism in the American people. I share that optimism, and I'd love to have the opportunity to lead in the very footsteps of what he did for this country, to turn us around and put us in the right direction going forward.
Is there any scenario, if Donald Trump runs the table and becomes the Republican nominee, would you be willing to serve as vice president?
Oh, 2 weeks in, I think I've got to focus not on VPs or anything else. I've got to be focused on earning the votes of people in Iowa, in New Hampshire, in South Carolina, in Nevada, in North Carolina, Missouri, where we're at today, Illinois, elsewhere across the country. I think we've got an excellent shot of winning the caucuses and primaries everywhere. There's not a state we're drawing off the list. You know, sometimes people say, candidate can do well here, but not there. I don't think there's a state in America where we can't do well in the early caucus and primary process. And so we're going to spend our time focused on that.
Who would you emulate, and who would you include in your team of foreign policy national security advisors?
Well, in my lifetime, the best president of national security and foreign policy was a governor from California. Under President Reagan, he not only rebuilt the military, he showed us how to stand up for our allies, he showed us how to stand up to our enemies, and without apology, he stood for strong American values, and that led to one of the most peaceful times in modern American history. I think what that shows is effective national security and foreign policy is not about speeches or trips, it's about leadership. It's about, as a governor, you surround yourself, if you're good, Democrat, Republican alike, if you're a good governor, you surround yourself with a cabinet of people who are exceptional in their areas of expertise. You work with them, you listen to them, but in the end, the buck stops with you. You have to make decisions.
When did you decide that you could and should run to be the next president of the United States?
Well, for Tonette and I, we spent a lot of time after last fall's election, going into the holidays around Christmas, where we spent a lot of time not just talking and thinking with others, but really praying as a family as to whether or not this was a calling. Because I think the closer one gets to this, the more you realize you have to be a little crazy if you just want to be president. Instead of wanting to be president, I think if someone's serious about this, they have to feel like it's a calling. After a lot of prayer, we felt like it was a calling for us. It's still up to God and ultimately the American people to decide if they're going to elect us to. So I can't say I've been called to be the president, I've just been called to run for it. But that's how we make decisions. And for us, I'm an optimist. For Tonette and I, we look at the challenges our state faced, and for our sons, Matt and Alex, we took the risk to run for governor because we wanted it to be better for our children and their generation. I'm an optimist. I believe it's not too late for America. I believe with the right leadership in Washington, we can make this country better for Matt and Alex, my two boys, and all the other sons and daughters like them. And that's what I want. I want them to inherit a country even greater than the one we inherited from our parents and grandparents.
Bold ideas, tough fights, major victories. That's what Scott Walker speaks of daily at campaign stops, and it's an effective message. Since governors have executive experience, voters may value that type of experience in 2016. This has been a Newsmax Prime Special, a conversation with Scott Walker. I'm J.D. Hayworth. Thanks for watching.